Two,
One.
one. Monkey bars. I check.
Jack!
Danny Brown, come back to music, please. We need you. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Thicc Butter podcast. My name is Thicc.
My name is Butter.
I did this wrong, but my name is also Alex.
My name is also Jesse.
And this is going to be another classic review. This was not the movie that we had planned to do for the next classic review, but because of unfortunate circumstances, um, rest in peace, Ray Liotta.
Rest in peace.
We thought that this would be a great opportunity to do a classic review for Goodfellas. And there's another reason.
Big reason.
Jesse had never seen this movie, which is crazy. And honestly, I was jealous of you. I mean, I'm always jealous of people who haven't seen like a classic movie or haven't seen something that like I love or an album, or it's like, oh, dude, you get to hear this for the first time. I'm always jealous of that because this is probably the fourth or fifth time I've seen Goodfellas, and it's like, it's still I still have that love for it, that magic for it, but not like the first time you see it. It's pretty earth shattering. Some of these classic films, like when you see it for the first time, that's why they're classic.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was super excited to like share this movie with you. It's just crazy to say, but
it was a bit like one of those embarrassing things for me that like
everybody
calling. Like that you have like a when you call yourself, like when you go to like film school, like I have a film degree and I haven't seen Goodfellas, it just feels a little bit ridiculous. But it was just like one of those movies that like a lot of like my friends had either seen it a long time ago or they like weren't into it. My parents weren't like really into it. They showed me a lot of other classics, but they weren't really into Scorsese. And it just like, believe it or not, never came up. So and it was nice that it came up.
Movies that I haven't seen.
Yeah, there always is, right? But Goodfellas seems a little crazy.
I mean, it took me a while to like. It took me. I mean, I'm gonna out myself right here. I mean, you know this. I hadn't seen the Lord of the Rings movies. Until college.
Yeah.
Like my sophomore year in college. I watched them all, and I was like, "These are really good." And everybody was like, "Yeah, Lord of the Rings." So that was like my last like. There's probably a lot of them that I haven't seen, but yeah, I mean, everybody has those, and if you're lying to yourself and you haven't, just own it. Just own it and watch it or don't,
And as these movies get older, even though they're still just as fantastic, especially in this day and age when we're not getting movies like this as much anymore, but like people, they're just not as much a part of the common nomenclature.
Absolutely, yeah, right.
So you do have to seek them out a bit more than 10 years ago.
Yeah,
even like 5 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you have to like. I mean, I know that like, this movie, like I don't know how long we would have waited to watch this because when Ray Liotta passed away, I was like, oh, first of all, I just wanted to watch it because to respect the legend, Ray Liotta, and I love this movie, so I was like, well, this is the perfect time to rewatch it, But you never know, like. The timing is like it's all about timing too for those classics,
Yeah, and what we just mentioned beforehand when Alex was saying he was worried part of him was worried that I wouldn't like it and what that conversation would be. And it got on the point of, with classics, you have to be kind of careful because of the expectation problem, because all classics are overhyped. It doesn't matter if you're called a classic, it's overhyped, and you probably have heard about it before. So you have to work really hard to be in a mindset where you're not
seeing. You have to go your whole life until you're like 45 and you watch Star Wars for the first time. You probably would be like, this isn't that good.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Because it's so crazy. I would love to see it. I can't wait till I have kids and show them Star Wars the first time. But yeah, like that would be a funny experience. You know, you hear about this thing for your whole life when you finally watch it. You're like, eh.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I watched Terminator the other day, and it just hit me about like the first Terminator. What that was like, you know, for people. They didn't know the Terminator. They didn't know that what this was going to be like. And they see this such an original idea, crazy. And like someone now who would watch that would be like, it's an action film, sure, kind of like low budget, right? Is what like modern audience who don't know anything might say something as crazy as that.
This thing called context.
Right. But like I could see how people could say that or feel that. And
when did that come out? 1980 or like 81 or something like that?
Yeah, it's like in the early 80s, I would say.
Some of the effects of the first Terminator are interesting. But they have a beautiful charm to them, but they are definitely like it came out in the 80s, you know.
Right.
Budget 80s.
Right. Like when Schwarzenegger is fixing himself up and you see the fake head, you know, which is clearly a fake head, which I love it. I love it to death.
The last thing.
The stop motion. I was thinking about that when I was watching
total
it.
charm to it, but like it's definitely like, you know,
the cool thing,
it breaks the illusion. You
know, the cool thing about that, though, I would mention, which not to do a Terminator review, we're going to talk about Goodfellas eventually, but with that scene,
it's like creepy. It's like,
well, I was thinking about how, like, I was watching it and my first response is like kind of what you said. It's like, this is a blockbuster movie and this looks, you know, like child's play now. But then I thought about it. It's like, this is stop motion, you know, this is stop motion that someone handcrafted for this film.
I mean, all those movies. I mean, like Star Wars, like the original Star Wars trilogy is unbelievably awesome to watch. You know, like hand models, like all that hawk sequence is just models and shit. I mean, it's fucking amazing.
And Star Wars, the original Star Wars trilogy is something really special because I honestly don't feel like it's dated almost at all.
No,
it's
there's definitely parts of it. I mean, good enough because George fucking ruined them.
Right.
Parts of them because he
Isn't that weird?
CGI,
like those fixed parts are the dated parts, but like the original like models and puppets and all of that, like still really communicate, especially like for a kid watching that, they would just be so into that immediately.
Dude. Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about Star Wars at some point in this podcast.
The classic review of Star Wars.
I mean, not as well, dude. Like
we haven't done it yet. Everyone else has, but we haven't.
But yeah, so we're gonna talk about Goodfellas, which is a 1990 or 91. I think 90 for that. Martin Scorsese classic. This is what's funny is the last classic review we did was The Godfather, which I would argue that The Godfather, Goodfellas, and possibly like something like The Gambler or something, or like the quintessential mobster movies.
Yes, definitely.
Gangster movies. It's funny that we did two of them back to back. It's funny how that played out.
It is.
So, wow, I don't even know where to begin. I guess I'll start with like Martin Scorsese. If you don't know who this guy is, he's a really cool filmmaker.
Do a quick Wikipedia on him.
But seriously, he's one of my favorite filmmakers of all time. I know that's cliche and lame, you know. Oh, Martin Scorsese, you like Martin? Yes, I love his films. This is how good of a filmmaker I think Martin Scorsese is. I think Goodfellas will have a hard time cracking the top 5 of my Scorsese movies. That's how good of a filmmaker I believe he is. I have films that I believe that are better than what some believe to be his magnum opus. Like that's how much I love this guy's films and think that he's still killing it to this day.
Yeah.
And I know like you didn't love The Irishman as much. I'm actually very curious to see if you, because you didn't see Goodfellas before you saw The Irishman.
I want to rewatch Irishman after I
If you,
watched
I mean, if you
Goodfellas.
watch Casino too, you actually like get more out of The Irishman.
Yeah.
Because The Irishman to me, why I liked it, it was a total response to films like Goodfellas and Casino and the films that he was making earlier in his career. That was what was interesting about the movie. To begin
Yes,
with,
I
it is
definitely thought that.
too long, but but I really enjoy The Irishman, but he's still killing it. And there's a movie coming out this year, and
Woo.
so um, this was in 1990. So he was, I mean, this was the peak of Scorsese. This was like he was on he was on something. He was on a different level. He was like a master filmmaker. And then when this came out, it just blew out of the water. It became
Yeah.
this uh, cultural phenomenon to the point where you know, another thing that you could say that we talked about with The Godfather, this movie, uh, I think even more than The Godfather, is so influential in terms of like how the storytelling and like just how many movies and how many films like this and epic gangster movies especially have taken from this movie. It's
Yeah.
almost comical. There's part of this movie that if you, I don't know, I'm curious to see what you think, but like, there's part of this movie where I'm watching it and when like songs like Sympathy for the Devil and like the Studs, like, the classic soundtrack that this movie has, could be like kind of parody or corny because so many fucking things have stolen this Scorsese style of using soundtrack. I'm just talking about music specifically. How Scorsese uses music in his films is like the coolest shit ever. I mean, like it is the coolest. The soundtrack to this movie is the coolest. I mean, it is like incredible. But there is part of it where it's like kind of parody almost because it's
Yeah.
like, of course, the Stones kick in when like cocaine is being passed around. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Think about
Yeah.
how many movies like you see when people do cocaine and like the Stones start playing. So it's like, but this was it. I mean, this was
Yeah.
the movie that started that kind of trend. That's just one trend. I'm not talking about the tracking shots and like all the
Yeah, dude.
incredible visual stuff that has been, homaged, influenced, an absurd amount.
Yeah.
And
I feel
like,
like
yeah, it's
comparing it
crazy.
to the Godfather is really cool and enlightening because they're two classics in two very
Yeah,
different ways in the ways
totally.
that we kind of
Yeah.
describe, where I feel like the
Yeah, like 20
Godfather is a
years apart.
classic, right? First of all. But the
Yeah.
Godfather is kind of classic in that there's like visual sequences. Well, people do this for Goodfellas too, but bear with me.
Yeah,
But like the Godfather, people like remember shit from that movie.
sure.
And like the Goodfellas was really influential in what you're describing and changing how movies were made.
Yeah,
The
right.
Godfather,
Right.
both of those like can overlap, but I feel like this distinction's like an interesting one because the
Yeah,
Godfather is like you remember like an offer you can't refuse and shit like that, and
right.
Goodfellas you remember like what you're talking about, like how it's edited and all of that, and I
Right.
totally felt that when I was
It's the
watching
style.
Goodfellas.
The
Yeah.
style Scorsese, I wouldn't call myself, I haven't seen every Scorsese movie yet, but I've seen most of them. I've seen
Mhm.
everything that he's made basically. Well, no, that's not true. I haven't seen his first two movies, but everything he did in the 80s and,
Mhm.
like late 70s. And so, like, what's crazy about this movie is that it really was, you can see it as his early movies, like him kind of finding his style, finding this rhythm and this editing style that he was building up to. And
Yeah.
Goodfellas is like the fucking, I mean, like peak of that. And you see like how ridiculous of a filmmaker Martin Scorsese. If you really think Scorsese's overrated or something like that, and you like haven't seen this movie, this will just knock you. This will slap you in the face and go, what are you talking about? I mean, the way that this movie is directed, paced, it is perfection. And you can't even argue with me that it's not.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
endlessly entertaining. Like
it's a profound expression of mastery. It
yeah,
really is.
and it's
And
interesting because after this movie, you see like films like Wolf of Wall Street, Casino, um, almost like someone would say, I don't because I love his style so much, but especially in Wolf of Wall Street, a lot of Goodfellas in that movie, a lot of it, a lot of similar things that he's doing, but that's his style. That's the
right.
Scorsese style,
Right.
and
Scorsese
so
kind of
this
gets
is
he
the movie
gets
where he really was like just click. And sure, like he's doing different things. Like Silence doesn't feel anything like
yeah, sure.
or Shutter Island or something, for example, or The Aviator. But The Departed, has that kind of updated a little bit, a little different, because he's dealing with like different. It's a different time period, but it has that same kind of kinetic energy that he kind of forms with this movie. That
Right, right. And
is unbelievable.
it's he's one of those directors who's just so famous. He's in the similar category of like Tarantino and Wes Anderson, who get
Spielberg, yeah.
criticized for like doing their style because it's so
Oh, sure.
iconic that
Yes,
people feel
yes,
like it's
yes.
derivative because it's
Sure,
like, oh, I've seen that before. Well, it's just
sure.
like, well, he invented it. He created
Well,
it.
also, I would argue that he invented that, but he's also like what I said earlier. Like he's made films that divert. He got like there. I mean, if you tell me he's only made gangster movies, you're stupid. I mean, you're
Right.
dumb. He's made
Yeah, it's not true. Yeah.
four out of his 20-year career or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and but it just happens that those films are like some of his like, most iconic movies. So like,
Right. So
I
that's
get
what
it.
people know. Yeah.
I get it. But yeah, you're so right. I've heard that a lot. Where like, and that's fine. It's not into his style because the thing is, his style has been replicated to an absurd degree. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
there are
Really,
so many.
really
Even
crazy.
someone like Tarantino, where you can see, like in a Pulp Fiction, for example,
Uh-huh.
or a
Uh-huh.
Reservoir Dogs, or you see Scorsese, like you
Yeah.
see
Tarantino would definitely never happen without Scorsese.
no,
Never,
no, no,
ever,
oh no,
never.
no, 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 no,
Like Pulp Fiction,
no.
Pulp Fiction, I feel like he watched Goodfellas obsessively to be able to figure out
Or
how to
Taxi
do
Driver,
Pulp Fiction. Yeah, Taxi Driver, like it's insane. Like all
yeah,
of the movies, it's crazy. Like I was really noticing that when I was watching Goodfellas. It's
yeah.
just really and for me, I didn't feel like it wasn't like old, like I've seen it before. Like sometimes I watch a classic and
No,
sometimes it's like, man, this has
no,
been reused and perfected in a way. It's
yeah,
like people, when I watched that, it was like I see the influence that he has, and he did it better than anyone has ever done it since. Like no
yes.
one, I could see people trying to do this, and no one has done it this
Well,
good.
the problem is like when you try to do it, it's like you're like this is Goodfellas, and then there's so many
Yeah, yeah.
gangster movies that I like that like have come out like post this movie that I like and I enjoy, but I'm totally like Goodfellas is cool, right? Like as I'm watching it because it's like I get what you're doing, but it's cool, it's like it's fine, but it's just I mean it's crazy. So I guess well, if you haven't seen this movie, I can't believe I will explain this, but if you know what this movie's about, it's about Henry. This is a true story. It's based on a book called Wise Guys, which I've always wanted to read. I haven't. I don't read, but I'm starting to. I'm starting to read, so maybe
One
maybe
book
this
at
will
a
be
time.
the next book. Maybe I'll do a segment on this podcast called Alex's Reading Corner, where I'll talk about
What I
what I'm
read
reading,
today.
what I read today. Diary of a Wicked Kid 24. Um, but it's based on a book called Wise Guys. It's based on a real guy named Henry Hill, who basically started working in the mob when he was a young boy, and he
Young
worked
little
his way
man.
up, and it's got the rise and fall of Henry Hill, who is a notorious gangster. As simple as that. And it is
Mm-hmm.
about
Mm-hmm.
it spans about 10 years of his life, or longer. Probably like I mean, it starts as a kid, so it's probably it spans about 20 years.
Yeah,
And we'll
I
get
think that
into the
sounds right.
storytelling. 'Cause I think it's like fucking genius.
Yeah, yeah,
How this movie
yeah,
is structured, um, where they structure it in uh, dates, like specific dates that come up. Like there's 4 or 5 that, and when you see a date come up, you know some shit's about to happen. Uh,
yeah.
where it does these really great things where it spaces out these like almost really important moments. Like that's how the film is kind of structured, and in between, it's like almost the filler and the ride to like get to this certain point. If that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it's about stars Ray Liotta, Robert Downey Jr.
Whoa,
Wow, Robert
whoa.
De Niro, and Joe Pesci, and Lorraine Bracco.
Mhm.
And I noticed like this is like the fifth time I watched this, fourth time, is the voiceover. Like some of the like narration in movies is kind of like I don't think people know how to do it. I think there's only there I could pick like a handful of movies that do narration really well. Like Goodfellas, American Psycho, Forrest Gump. But it's really hard to do. I don't know what it is. I think it's because like when you do narration, especially from the main character's perspective, as he's like telling the story, you're sometimes you can feel like you're being removed from the actual drama of the story because you're it's breaking the fourth wall. It's like the same idea to me, where it's like you know what I mean? Where it's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
um I don't know, I feel like that's one of the reasons why narration's so hard. But like this
yeah.
movie, I think maybe the best example of narration that I've ever seen in a
Yeah,
movie.
yeah. And I think one of the things I think people fail so hard at narration is that it slows down the movie because it turns into a way of over explanation and over
Yeah, for
exposition.
sure. Yeah, right.
And this narration in Goodfellas is poetry. It's literal
It's
poetry.
incredible, and it's
And it's
throughout the whole thing. It's not
yeah,
just like it's like the whole thing,
yeah.
which is
And it's also
amazing.
and it also has, which this is, kind of a classic and something that you see often in a very effective way to use narration, where it's him from a future sense. It's not him like
Exactly. Right.
talking in
Right.
his mind at
Right.
the moment, which
Yeah,
I
he's
think,
telling the story. He's
yeah,
telling
and
the story of his come up and
which
his
which
downfall.
already
Yeah.
gives sets up that the rise and fall sensation, because he
Yeah.
sounds from the very first narration like some shit happened to me,
I've
and you
always
won't
wanted to be a
want to know
gangster.
what it is. So, and the lines, right, too, like the lines and the way
Yeah.
he does, because a lot of times what people don't think about with narration is just how good your voice has to be for it to work. And his voice is just
Yeah. I mean,
perfect.
Ray Liotta is fantastic in this movie. He is incredible. Um, yeah, I mean, it's honestly one of my favorite performances of all time. Like, he's charismatic, he's funny, he's scary, he's like, naive. It's Henry Hill is such an amazing character. Like, he's
Yeah,
one of the best characters of all time. He's like one of the most like recognizable, like, um, you can hear when you hear Henry Hill, you can hear the voice. You can hear the movements. You can almost like see his the body language and everything. Like it's such a amazing character, and I feel that way about all the characters in this movie.
yeah.
Um, Jimmy Conway played by Robert De Niro, and Tommy played by Joe Pesci, and one of the most iconic performances ever. Joe Pesci in this movie. He's like a bunny, like a clown.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think this is the one where he won his Oscar. I think he won an Oscar for this movie. I think.
Well fucking deserved. Holy
Yeah, I
crap.
think he won an Oscar for this movie, and then had the greatest speech of all time, where he got his Oscar, went on stage, and said thanks, and then walked off stage. It was the shortest Oscar speech of all time. Joe
Badass.
Pesci, I think. Yeah, he literally went, "Thank you," and then left the stage. Like, oh yeah. Um, but yeah, I mean, all the characters are so incredible. Like, to the narration, I think how Scorsese directs this movie is super unique, and he tells it from this um I like it like a novel almost. Like the
Hmm.
way that like it moves is not a lot like it's very different from other films. Like especially at the time, like just the narration and how he uses things like stills and
Yeah, I
photographs
was really
and
drawn
like
to that.
archival footage and like things like that that like make this movie feel so like alive and different. And like this is one of the cool things about making a movie based on a true event and like a true story is it's like he's Scorsese's just like, I'm telling this movie, we have this whole story here. And I'm just gonna tell this movie like he's making the novel, on the screen. Like he's not like trying to like write a whole script that's like, trying to get the essence of the novel. No, he's literally like, we're gonna just put this story on screen and like get the drama and get so he's telling it from almost this like bird's eye view almost, where he's just like letting these things happen and just letting characters
Yeah.
come in and like the character relationships like happen rather than like it doesn't feel it feels spontaneous. It feels like
Yeah,
that you
spontaneous is
really
a
are
really good
like
word for it.
watching like um Henry Hill's life, like you really do, and
Yeah, this was one of like
where you're
the
hearing him tell the story and you're literally picturing it. You're seeing it. You know,
yeah, play
which is
out. Yeah,
amazing.
I feel like it's one of the more most immersive like
Yeah.
experiences I've had. And when I was thinking, Anthony Bourdain had this really amazing comment on Joe's Pesci performance where he describes it as
Yeah.
like Ray Parker playing saxophone, which I thought
Yeah.
that was like a really good analogy for it. And I was thinking about it, and I really feel like that like we could think of The Godfather and the way it's sort of structured and paced feels sort of like this operatic or classical symphony, with movements. And
Yeah.
this really feels like jazz, like spontaneous jazz, where
Yeah.
it's
Oh
contained
yeah.
and he knows where he's going and it's so controlled,
Right.
but it's not, it's just loose, it's just
Yeah,
going wherever it
that's a
needs
really
to.
good point. Because I think that a lot of that is like the setup of the character, especially in the beginning where like I think my favorite thing about this is such a like superficial thing, like but
Mm-hmm.
to that point, it's just the characters.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean like
Oh my
the
God.
way
Yeah.
that they interact, like the three of them, De Niro, Pesci, and Leona, they have this like incredible chemistry,
Yeah.
and they set up in the beginning that they've known each other for their whole lives. They
Mm-hmm.
grew up in the mob together, and so um, when certain events happen at the end of the film, it's heartbreaking. And Scorsese does this amazing job of setting up all these things in the beginning, and like just through the characters that you really feel like you know them. Like I know that sounds corny, but you feel like you really know them. You feel like that you've lived this life with them. And so when you know Jimmy, tries to put a hit on Henry, and they hear the news about Tommy getting whacked. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It's
You really,
it's
really
terrible,
feel
and
it.
that's the genius of this movie, really, at the essence, because these people are horrible people. They're
Yeah.
committing horrible crimes. They're
Yeah.
gangsters.
Yeah.
But the way that Scorsese puts you in the shoes of the gangster, like you you get um the luxury, the the power, the almost elation that you have of being this like powerful person. Like I get that so heavily when when Henry Hill meets Lauren Grant, his wife Karen, and I mean this super iconic shot where he
Yeah.
brings her to the restaurant. I mean
Yep.
the luxury and the beauty and the like badassery almost of like the character where he's able to like bring this girl like backstage and like impress her, with his, status and like you feel it. It's like it's really awesome. It puts you, it's been described as the coolest movie ever. And
Yeah, it's
it is. I
so
mean,
cool. It's
it's
so
so
cool.
the swagger of this movie is like
Yeah.
unbelievable. I
Yeah,
mean,
Uncharted.
you
Yeah, it's
know, and so
crazy.
like, but what's amazing is when those acts of violence and those uh scary things happen, it brings you back down to earth and you're like who you're dealing with, you know, and it really you really get the full scope of what it's like to be a gangster. Like I know that's crazy, but through Henry Hill, who obviously is a very conflicted, you know, character, by the end he goes into the witness protection program and, you know, seeing these horrible things like colleagues being a complete psycho
Yeah,
and
totally.
killing, you know,
Die,
people, just
die,
random people.
die.
Yeah, we talk about how funny this movie is too. This is
Yeah,
hilarious.
it's so
Um,
funny.
but like you see the fear that he has in some of these
Yeah.
moments, and like Scorsese just is like able to like just set this up so brilliantly without you like almost knowing how it's gonna end. If that makes sense, it's not like as you're watching this, you're like, I don't know what's gonna happen to Henry Hill. You know, like, I don't know what like I don't know where this movie's really going, you know?
Yeah.
It really has that amazing job of like keeping you on your toes, even though it has this like fourth wall breaking
Right.
type
Right.
thing.
Right. It's an amazing thing. I've been thinking about that a lot with the thinking about with movies of the difference between anticipation and predictability, because in
Yeah.
movies you want anticipation, where like in this
Abs-
film you
oh
you
yeah.
know what's going to
Yeah.
happen. He's going to
Yeah.
fucking fall off. He's going to crash and
You
burn.
want that tension.
But like the anticipation is like, I don't know how that ending is going to happen. Like, how the hell are we going to get there? Because it seems like he has everything. Like, you're right. In every scene, you're like, you're on the edge of your seat. Like,
Yeah.
what is going to happen? What is going to
Yeah.
happen next?
And a lot of that is just through, I mean, Scorsese, the way that, I mean, one of the things that he's amazing at is directing tension. And
Oh,
like
yeah.
able to, I mean, there's so many scenes in like films like After Hours and King of Comedy and like Taxi Driver and, you know, Wolf of Wall Street. All his films have like, he's able to set up characters so well. And so when a scene like the diner scene at the end of the film with Jimmy and Henry, there's a lot of tension there because you have the history, you know what's going to happen. And like
Yeah.
when Henry's explaining, like, that's what I knew, Jimmy was going to put a hit on me. And like, just that moment of how, I mean, the acting in the movie is absurd. I mean, it's like the best acting I think I've ever, like, it's incredible, the
Yeah.
performances in this movie. And, but that's really, to me, like, true cinema. Like, if you can set up, like, if
Right.
you could
Right.
like set up like characters so well where you could just have them like just having a simple conversation with them like at the diner and like all this history and set up all this stuff for a moment like that to like really like hit you, and it's about horrible people that should be in jail like criminals, dude. Like you transcended, you basically you made gangsters relatable and cool and made someone who would never be a gangster want to be a gangster kind of,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's like that factor, I think, is one of the many reasons why Scorsese is such a genius, is that his control over the subtext feelings of film,
Yeah. He knows
where
the whole time I watched this movie this time, I was like, every decision that he makes in this movie is
yeah.
like perfect. Every single one. Like every cutaway, like every cut in to like certain things that he does, like I can't even describe it, but the feeling he's able to like where he puts the camera is like I don't know if there's anyone better at like creating emotional subtext like Martin Scorsese. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
I
And
mean, it's
I'm thinking of the
incredible.
scene like when Henry has the fight with Karen and he's at his girlfriend's house,
At
and
the oh yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and
Where is it,
Paul
Karen? Yeah, I love that scene, dude.
but this is the scene where De Niro and Paul, the mob boss, who the actor's also named Paul, I think, or
Ollie,
Jimmy and Paulie come in, and it's just like a reverse shot sequence between three people, you know, and they're telling him that he
yeah,
has to break up with his girlfriend and get back
incredible. Yeah,
together with Karen. But
yeah,
the subtext of that scene, I was really noticing it with De Niro's character, with his performance, where he just says like, you just got to do it, you know. But there's so much meaning behind what he's saying,
exactly.
because it's
Right.
like, if you don't do this, you're
We're
gonna
gonna kill.
die.
Yeah. Right.
We're yeah, or like we're gonna kill your
Yeah. I mean,
family.
that's something that's so amazing. Is like throughout, like that's the beginning of the movie where you learn, like you learn so much more about you learn about the inner workings of the mob. You know, Henry
Yeah,
sets it up so well in the beginning of the film. This movie's only 2.5 hours, and the amount of information and things that the movie throws at you, especially in the first like hour, it's a lot, you know. It's
yeah,
but the thing is, if you really break it down, it's a lot that happens in the first like hour. The amount of information that you learn in the first hour of this
yeah.
movie is like insane. But
Well,
it doesn't feel like a lot, you
yeah,
know.
like at the first 20 minutes is the only amount of time that he spends on his childhood, right?
Yeah,
And then he's an adult after the first 20 minutes. And I paused right there to like use the bathroom. And I
yeah.
was like, we're 20 minutes in? That's
Dude,
crazy.
this movie
20
feels like
minutes?
30 minutes.
I
Like
know.
legit, when I paused it to go to the bathroom, I was an hour and 15 minutes in, and I literally
Yeah.
stood up and I was like,
What?
I thought I'd been here for like 30 minutes. Like
Yeah.
legit, like this movie feels it's so well paced and so well edited that like
It's basically effortless to watch. It's so like you're just
that's
in
something
it from
about like
beginning to end.
I didn't really notice this about Scorsese's movies until I went to the Academy Museum,
Mm,
where they had a whole section of editing, and Scorsese's famed editor is named Thelma Schumacher, and she like they had a whole section for her, like in this museum, and they had her editing day that she like edited. I think it was not Taxi Driver, one of the movies we did in the '80s, like it's so hard, but you know, rewatching this, I was like, the editing of this movie is absurd. Like
hmm.
it's absurd, and like you start thinking about like how movies were edited, and like in the early '90s and before, to do things like this, the precision and the like complete, like every shot of this movie feels like it's fixed. Like even in great movies, you'd be like, that was a little too weird cut. You know, even in phenomenal movies, phenomenal. Even movies in The Godfather, I would
Yeah.
see it like, oh yeah, that was an odd cut. Dude, this like the editing of this movie is insane. And when you think
Yeah.
about like
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
the camera never stops moving, and when it does stop moving, it's like you're like holding on to your seat because
Yeah.
like that means something's happening. You know, that's one of the
Yeah.
things that Scorsese does so well is like he really that's what I mean when like he knows where to place the camera. Like he knows like what the perfect example. This is not in Goodfellas, but in Taxi Driver when he's on the phone and he brought that girl to the porno theater. Had that horrible scene. Just oh my god, it's so hard to watch. Um, and he's calling her on the phone, and he's like, "Hey, can we go out again?" And he literally just pans to the like just moves away from De Niro and just points at the empty hallway, and you just hear De Niro having a conversation. It's like that's what I'm talking about. It's like that
Yeah.
feeling that you get just by
Yeah.
doing that is amazing. I'll never forget the first time I saw that shot. I mean, I literally was like, it changed me. I saw it, I was like, what? Like, it's like it's a decision that is like so simple, but incredibly perfect, and you can't even really describe what is so perfect about it. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's almost like I think I saw Bill Hader, I think, on some TikTok interview where he's talking about that specific shot, and he talked about like he said something so funny where he's like, "Oh, the movie doesn't want to watch this," where the movie like it's so embarrassing and so like that the movie's just like, and
Nope.
just
Nope.
and that's such a I think that's one way to look at it. There's so many things that you can take from that decision, but Scorsese does that a lot in this movie, like where he'll put in a cutaway into something that you maybe are like a little confused about, but it just the feeling of it is just right. Like, it's incredible. He's able to
Yeah, that's the
do that
thing.
so well.
That's getting at the core of like what is my favorite thing about movies. And I think what most people's
Yeah,
favorite things are, even if they don't really realize it, what they like the most is what, like, this phenomenon you're describing that's kind of indescribable. But this is the thing that like I miss so much, that we don't see as much in modern movies, because a lot of modern movies are based more on like these cool set pieces and are
yeah,
shot
right.
using coverage style, which is really boring to
Yeah, yeah,
watch,
yeah,
because
yeah.
coverage is just where you have master shots close up and you just sort of logically
Right.
cut between them based on beats and stuff, which
And
is
that's gonna
fine. It's
obviously, there's tons of movies that obviously have been shot that way, and like it could work. If you set up like tension and you set up like the characters well, that could work
yeah,
obviously.
you can
But
tell that you can
you're
tell a
right.
story that way,
Yeah,
but
you're right.
it's you're missing out on the
Yeah,
potential, which I think that's another thing I really like about watching old, like, the gangster classics. Or I felt the
yeah,
same way about The Godfather too, where it's just like, dude, this is just like a camera and some great actors and some awesome sets,
yeah,
and it's just like, and you're just thinking about, how do I depict this visually, how
yeah,
do I do that, how do I, and that's, you just get magic shit like that
yeah,
when you think in that way, and when you have as much
yeah.
experience as Scorsese, of
Well, yeah,
course,
I
because
mean, like it's
Scorsese is the
so
magic
hard. I mean,
potion.
the hard thing is like at this point in his career, he had this like film language, like what he, because even if you watch some of the short films, fascinating to watch, because you see like um things in the even those early short films that he made, like the style, like form, like his language, like form, like the fourth wall breaking and the um still photographs that he like puts in. There's some short films that like have that feel like Goodfellas. If you watch it, you're like, oh my god, this is like where he got this is where he started
the
to get
the
the
the,
ideas
the
for
inception of
some of the
Goodfellas.
visual
Yeah.
style that he had of Goodfellas. And
Yeah, it's
like
so cool.
um yeah, I mean like I love the way that this movie is directed. I mean it's insane how well everything moves and how like every scene that is supposed to not I wouldn't say screws the film to a halt, but it would um it's a needed character moment and a needed like um cooldown. It's endlessly riveting. Like there's not one moment in this movie that I find to be um boring. And like none of them. Like everything is like endlessly entertaining and like interesting. And like all that is through the style to me. And the story is great. The story of Henry Hill is like bonkers. Like it's crazy. It helps that the film has this awesome story, right? And this classic story, this like classic rise and fall gangster story. Um, but think about how many times you've seen a movie like this, like the rise and fall of the gangster, not nearly as exciting as Goodfellas, and that's because Scorsese's brought this whole level of luxury almost to the story, which could easily be seen as like
Hmm.
and he
Hmm.
brought this like extreme high class to it,
Yeah, and
which
that's a yeah
transcended it.
that's a really good point that kind of talks about that we can kind of talk about the comparison of why why this film, even though it's been referenced and maybe redone, if you will, over and over again, why it's not obsolete by any sense of the
Yeah,
word. And I think it's kind of along the lines that you're talking about. People can copy the rise and fall story arc. That can be done,
yeah.
that will be done for eternity, because it's like
Yeah,
one of these classic
it's a
stories.
Greek mythology.
Right,
It, that's
right.
I mean, like it's
It's what
ingrained in human culture. I
and
love stories like that, by the way.
and the plot, the gangster plot, like, we're familiar with that too, right? we
Totally,
know
absolutely.
these plot
Yeah,
points, but it's the synergy of the way he shot it and the
yeah,
emotional story of
right.
Henry Hill,
Yeah,
what he wants, because, and he's such an interesting character. This is one of the things about Henry Hill that I love about
yeah,
this, because in a lot of movies, gangster movies, usually what you have is you have a character who just wants power and is in it to get to be the boss. which, you know, it is what Henry Hill wants. But his character's so
right.
cool because he's not a homicidal sociopath.
No,
He's just a sociopath who loves the life. He just loves
exactly.
it
Well,
so
that's the
much.
life that he knew. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what he was. He's basically grown into it, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and what I love too that Henry Hill, onto that point, is that one of the reasons that the movie works so well is because he views it as a family. He
Yeah.
views the dog as his family, his friends, and that's one of the reasons why I think you fall in love with the character so much, is because they're doing heinous things. They're killing people left and right. They're doing horrible things. But the scenes at the Christmas party, the scenes at the, they're hanging out at the bar, they're hanging out in like the nightclub, you know, it's fun. They're fun. They're having fun together.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
taking care of each other. There's great like moments where they genuinely care for their kids. Their friends' kids, and like it's a family, and you really feel that. You feel the community of this of the mom. It's very similar to the Godfather in that way, where you
Yeah.
you feel like that's a literal family, but you feel that same sensation,
Yeah, and it's interesting that what I like this, it's so cool to compare the Godfather and Goodfellas because like again, same genre if you will, but like light years apart, so different
Yeah,
from
for
each
sure.
other. And
Yeah.
I love this the idea of the families in these two things, a really cool comparison because in the Godfather what's cool is like the humanizing of these horrific people who
Yeah.
like you like believe in these horrific choices that they're doing. But then the disturbing thing about Goodfellas is like you fall in love with these characters, but you realize they're monsters. Like the idea, like
Yes.
why by the end
Yes.
of the film,
Yes.
like the
Yes.
person who's going to kill you is going to come smiling and friendly. It
Exactly. Right.
recontextualizes the whole thing because the friendliness
Exactly.
of it just
Right.
becomes like this is all sociopathy and it
Uh,
becomes terrifying
And
and
that's like
still charming.
that's such a brilliant, yeah. I mean, that's such a great point. And like I feel like a lot of that must come from because Henry Hill was alive, when they
Yeah.
made this movie, obviously,
Yeah.
and he was on set a lot of the time, and he was a great consultant,
Yeah.
and like that feeling of being betrayed, by your family or being like um recontextualizing who you thought your friends were and who you thought your family were, um, is such a powerful thing. And I guarantee that, having that straight from the resource of what he felt, when those things were happening towards the end were like priceless. I don't know if you'd be able to get that if you didn't have a direct, you know, um, source like, from the source. Like
Right, right. I was so curious
beautiful.
about the true story of it, and I found this really cool documentary that was basically
Yeah, it's called
a
Wise Guy, right?
I think so. There's that, and I don't know if I watched
I've
that, but
never seen that, but I think I know what you're talking about.
I watched something. It was just like a 45-minute thing on YouTube that had Henry Hill sort of recounting
Uh-huh.
his experience and the other like cops and police involved with the
Yeah.
situation. And it was really interesting because you have this guy who's clearly a sociopath,
Henry
he
Hill.
like,
Yeah, oh yeah, for
yeah,
sure. Yeah.
clearly. And he's talks about these things in this way where he's talking about like being scared or feeling sad, but then
Yeah.
also laughing when talking about these horribly violent things that were happening,
Right.
and
I don't
like,
know,
and
like
still being
I
a
that is
mobster.
sociopathic, but there is like I hesitate to even call it that because it's almost like that's what gangsters feel. They don't feel they're so enamored with their power, right? And like the joy. That's kind of what's interesting about gangsters in the first place to
Yeah.
me, is because they the scary thing is that they love power and money and are able to control the city in some way where they don't feel anything when they kill people because it's just like for their own benefit. And I
Right.
guess that is sociopathic. I mean, it totally is. But it's interesting to think about, does like if Henry Hill was born and didn't get along, would he still be a sociopath? I don't know. I think
Yeah.
I
That's
think
that's a
the
fucking
lifestyle,
fascinating
yeah,
question.
bred him to be this way, you know.
Right, right,
Um,
right. And it's really interesting. It's really interesting to see that. But I was just so, I was so struck by that because like this is again the comparison to the Godfather is good because those guys again monsters, but they're not really sociopathic because they have empathy for each other. Like everything that they
right,
do
yeah, right,
is
yeah.
like
But
is
so
like
do
they
they. Well, no, they don't. You know,
yeah.
you
And but
feel
that's
that's the creepy part of that. This situation is that the, especially from Henry Hill's perspective, is he believed, Jimmy loved him, but at the end of the day, he didn't. He really cared about himself,
right, right, right. And it's and again, the genius of that is that these characters, like most of these characters, don't really have that strong sense of empathy and like distress in themselves, but
Yeah.
they're still so
Tommy being the
compelling.
worst.
Yeah, Tommy, absolutely.
Yeah.
What a delightfully homos. Like he was so
Yeah.
amazing, such
Yeah,
a
he's
blast
incredible. Yeah,
to watch him.
amazing
But he's
character.
so scary.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like Joe Pesci, in this movie, like one of the reasons why he's iconic is he's fucking hilarious in this movie. He is one of the funniest characters of all time, but he's also one of the scariest characters I've ever seen in a movie. Like the scene, there's so many like amazing funny scenes with me that are genuinely like make me die laughing. There's like the one where like they're burning down the tiki shack
Yeah,
because
yeah,
because the cops start to catch on like this is where the gangsters hang out. So like, we gotta burn this place out, and
yeah,
so they're just sitting in the car waiting for the explosion to go off, and he's just like, "Come on, like go on this double date with me," and like there's just this like amazing scene where she's like, "I'm just trying to have sex with this broad. Like, can you help?" Like it's just, and then it explodes, and there's just this like hilarious little moments like that. And, like obviously, the iconic scene from the movie, I would say, is the "You're talking to me," or "Am I funny? Am I
yeah.
funny to you?"
By some kind of
But
clown.
I was trying to watch that scene without seeing it like a million times,
Yeah,
trying to remove myself from that, like trying to like see reviewing it for the first time. It's genius because when he's doing that, you're genuinely scared, and you can see everybody around him is scared of him when he's like the way I look, is that funny to you? Like he literally like on a dime goes from like whoa, and like you can see everyone is literally like terrified. And when he reveals that it's a joke, he gets he gets like a glass and basically smashes it over the waiter's head. Everybody starts laughing, and then it escalates, and then it gets like you get just from the onset for the first like I think that's the first scene that you meet him, really, and it completely sets up his character. Like
yeah,
from the onset, like this guy is unhinged. He's total anger issues.
yeah, yeah,
They love him. He's a funny, charismatic guy. But if you mess with him, I mean, it goes to 11 quickly. You know,
yeah.
and that's amazing to set up.
That's one of those scenes. As you're talking about it, I'm just realizing how much of a gift I had by watching that for the first time and
Yeah,
I never saw that clip before.
really,
Never.
never.
I never
Wow.
saw that clip
Yeah,
before. So that scene was a novel experience for me. And
yeah,
I'm just realizing how amazing that is that
yeah,
I got to see that last
yeah. That's
night for
awesome.
the first time because you're right. That switch in tone is the thing that I wish modern directors knew how to
Well, it's
do.
so hard, dude.
But you're right. It's like fucking
It's
impossible
like
because it's
really.
like
Well, I see why, dude. It's like I more admire filmmakers and movies that do that because it's like, dude, you're risking a lot. Dude, you're like because if a moment like that like doesn't work or translate, like the movie, like making a movie, like it's you're walking a tightrope. You're basically
mhm,
like trying to like keep the audience like engaged for what you're making, like and like get the intention correct or the feeling or whatever you're trying to go for, like correct in each step of the way. And something like a little mistake like that something like not working could like ruin a lot of the movie because
Yeah, that's
and
so.
so like that's what's really hard about taking risks like that, like total shifts like that, or like uh pointing something that is completely irrelevant to the scene, you know.
Right. And
Um
it also also the factor of why that scene's so good leans into the like film being a like total a combination of multiple elements that are going on, because on the first level it's like that performance that you capture, but
yeah,
someone who's not a good like cinematographer or a good editor might not assemble like get the right shot for that, or might not assemble the editing for
yeah,
that. Like for example, in that scene he goes back and forth where he cuts to Henry, who's saying, I don't know, you're just funny. If you say that one
yeah,
too many times, it gets annoying. Like it would
yeah.
be really
I don't
annoying.
know. It's just funny.
But he says it just the right amount of
The way
times
you
where
tell
it's
the
like
story is just funny.
it's like realistic and
Yeah.
terrifying. And you just and then
And the
also
scene
the
like keeps
decision,
going. It like ramps up the tension. Like
right.
he's like he's just like, oh, it's terrifying. It's
And
funny and
also
terrifying.
like that decision to hold on the long shot of Joe Pesci,
Right.
because most of the time people would say, well, cut into an expression, cut into a
Or cut
reaction,
in
you
a
know.
close up or something.
Yeah, and
It could have worked too, but
but
possibly.
that decision is just like, nah, Joe Pesci has it,
Yeah.
we don't need anything else, like
No,
just stay,
no,
just stay.
no.
And the one of the things I really loved about that scene is that, well, the scenes, it's because of these transitions within that one scene, like because there's that first thing where at first it's really funny, like you're laughing
Yeah,
with him, like
right,
that he was
right.
literally hysterical,
Yeah.
and then he switched to scary, and then there was that switch to when Henry realized he was fucking with him, which was like, that was crazy because he
It
was just like, and then because the whole tone shifted immediately,
was like
and
nervous
then
laughter at that point. You
yeah,
know?
and then switch back to the violence again. It's like, whoa,
And then
that's
they're laughing
crazy.
kinda, it just sets up like who Johnny was in the mob, how they would react to him.
Yeah, yeah.
So like it's a great there's one of the reasons there's a reason it's like super iconic, like other than like being a really amazing like tension filled funny scene, but it's an amazing setup for his character. Like it's incredible. Um
Yeah,
so
and
yeah.
it's you don't think about it because like, you know how when you're taking a picture of like the moon or something and it turns out like shit, and people who don't know about cameras just assume that you can just like put the camera in front of the thing you want to
Oh
capture
yeah.
and it
Oh
will look like how you envision it.
yeah.
And what I think is great about that scene
Yeah.
is that Scorsese put a ton of work into putting how that interaction would actually feel if you were sitting there. That's the
Yeah, that's
crazy
something
thing
about
about it.
him, his work that like he is like great filmmakers to me are great observers also
Yeah,
because the
yeah.
way that he's able to like capture human like tics, like human
Mm-hmm.
like I mean one of my favorite scenes is right before that when Henry's introducing all of the members of the mob and the camera is almost a
Oh,
POV.
wow, that's a
It is a
great.
POV, and it's
Yeah.
going from each character has this trait about him. And they describe it in Henry Hill's like we call him this because he said everything twice, and it's
Yeah.
like says like just everything like each character just feels so like distinct, and the way that Scorsese just sets that up in this like bar scene, it feels so alive. Like I mean, it
Yeah.
feels like that you're in the bar and you like are watching people. Like I feel like filmmakers just like great people watchers. Like they're able to like you know understand human behavior to the point where it's just like Scorsese could just be like, oh, I saw this guy in a New York bar one night.
And
Like
just put him in there.
yeah,
Yeah,
just
just
yeah,
put him
like
in there.
literally, that's what it is. That's what directing is. It's like, oh, I saw this. Like that's how you kind of create characters and create vibes, from watching other people, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
like it's just incredible at doing that. And throughout this whole movie, like this whole movie like has great side characters. Like fucking the wig guy, the Mark.
I
Uh,
love him. He's
yeah, he's
so funny.
amazing. Like yeah, all of little side characters are just as good, as the main characters. They feel like they have a whole life, like backstory, to them.
Yeah. Another thing about this film that I think is so great and makes it so great to watch, makes it so fun to watch. And but I also can understand why it might be weird to more modern audiences or like jarring,
Yeah,
is how he sets everything up really well, like exposition, the story stuff.
yeah,
He sets
yeah,
everything up, but he doesn't like hold your hand through telling you things.
yeah.
He really just like throws you in and just
Oh
says
yeah.
and just like trusts the filmmaking to do its job, which it does. But I
Well,
kind of feel
it's the
like,
idea of treating the audience like they're humans. Like
right,
movies are made like babies are watching the movies. I mean, like seriously. I mean, I wish I was exaggerating, but they literally like well, something that doesn't have hand holding, like you will see like grown men complaining that like it was like they didn't get it. It's like,
right,
dude, you're smarter than that. I mean, like
which
it's
is,
just people are trained now to like
yeah, that's the word,
almost just turn
training.
off their brain and just fucking like vegetable out in the movie theater.
Right. And I think that's the thing about like, which jazz is such a good comparison about this movie for like how I'm
Yeah,
thinking about it, because like jazz is one of those type of genres of music that people just kind of like, they just don't have the tools to wrap their head around
you
it if
have
you've
to
never
like
listened to
sit and kind
jazz
of listen
before.
to it. Yeah,
You have to like, you do have to like, you have to learn the ropes
yeah,
of like how
right,
jazz works or how you should
yeah,
listen to it. And if you just kind of go into it, it's like, this is just gobbledygook. I don't even
yeah,
understand
right,
what's happening
yeah.
anymore. So a film like this, I can see people having that response, which when it came out was not the case, right? This was like
No.
iconic when it
Yeah, it
came
was
out.
like a masterpiece. Everybody loved it. Yeah.
But it's an interesting comparison to about this training that we've gone through, because it's not that, I don't think that it's art that people are literally stupid. It's this
No, it's just
habit where
yeah,
you're
it's
just
just like
used to this other way of
exactly right,
storytelling.
right, exactly.
But
Yeah,
I
storytelling
love,
changes. Like no one's Scorsese. Not a lot of people are
right,
Scorsese. He's one of the greatest storytellers of all time. Like
right,
the way that he tells stories is like he's it's incredible. He's been doing it for 40 years.
yeah,
Incredible news for 40 years. He has made a lot of bad ones. I
yeah,
mean, some would argue no bad ones. So
yeah.
um, like yeah, I mean it's interesting. I'm pretty sure people still love this movie. I don't know if
I
like
think so too.
someone like a 20-year-old watches this would not like it. Like I don't know. But
I
um,
think I think it's like one of those reactions
I mean we're
where,
20, we love it. So
right, right. I think it's one of those things where like, I think people deep down, even if it's kind of hard to digest, just love good shit, like
well,
good, fulfilling
of course
shit.
they do.
And I
Yeah,
think I think that even though this movie, I think initially it might be kind of jarring.
yeah,
But
totally. Yeah,
like,
sure.
if you, depending on how out of context with this type of thing
Yeah.
you might be, but I think it's really very accessible. It's
Well, the
so
thing is, like,
accessible.
it's so like, I mean, I legit, I'm not kidding. It's one of the most entertaining movies of all time. I mean,
Yeah,
the way that this movie is paced, the characters, everything. Like I said, it's just like the story isn't really complicated. Like you're really like it's a lot. Like you can maybe miss some like plot elements in terms of like why they have to um bury the guy, for example, bury
hmm,
what's his name, and like the history of that. I guess like because that's really the catalyst for like shit happening where they're being investigated and like all these things. That's the trigger, the first scene of the movie and what they return to when they're, burying this guy, that uh Tommy just killed, because he was talking shit and he just decided to kill him in a bar,
yeah,
not
yeah.
realizing like how high up he is. Um and but you really miss some of the like
Right,
nuances of like
right,
the
right.
story because it's like so fast paced and like
Yeah,
right after the scene they're basically like explaining like fuck we whack so we gotta like we gotta bury him we gotta fucking you know get this off our chest because we're gonna be whacked we if they find out it was us and we get like this amazing sequence like this incredible sequence where they put him in the car and they drive and they go to Tommy's mom's house, which is Martin Scorsese's mother. That's his
That's
mother.
awesome. That's
Um,
awesome.
who's in a lot of his movies. He's in a lot of them.
She's
Um,
really good.
she's amazing. She's hilarious. Um, and yeah, that scene is amazing. Like them eating dinner and like the guy is just in the back. There's that great scene. She takes out the painting of the guy, and he's like, "Oh, that looks like somebody," and they all start laughing, and then the camera just zooms in on the trunk, like like banging the trunk. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
great, incredible. Um, and so you can list like things like that, like little subtle things about the story, and maybe like it might be kind of unclear maybe for the last 20 minutes, which to me are the best thing maybe like ever. The last like 30 minutes of the movie is like, I mean, I don't even, you can't get better than the last 30 minutes of Goodfellas, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
But
pretty fucking great.
like you might not understand really what's happening there because like when Henry gets out of jail for the first time, like it is like rocket ship. So it's like kind of confusing of like what he's I get it now, but the first time I watched it, I was like, okay, what's he doing? Okay, so basically he's becoming a drug runner. He's connected from Pittsburgh and he's getting this cocaine. He's basically a drug dealer now. And he's doing like all these different side hustles with Jimmy, like heisting a plane, like stealing a
Right,
plane and
right, right.
cargo
And
and
it's
stuff
so
like that.
complicated. Yeah.
Because they're not in the system anymore. So they are they're on their own, so they have to do things on their own. And so but yeah, the last 30 minutes when I mean, it's so iconic, dude. Like when he's like, you know, making the the sauce, the dinner, and he's snorting cocaine, and he has to try and do these different errands while like being paranoid that he's being watched by
Followed by a
like
copper. Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like it's
Yeah,
amazing. It
yeah.
all culminates to like this amazing scene when the cops raid him and like he gets out of jail, on bond, right, or something, or then he yeah, and then
Yeah, that's
he
right.
finds out that like the last money that you know Karen
Oh my
flushed the
god,
drugs
yeah.
down the
Oh my
toilet.
god.
Why did you do that, Karen? And they start like banging on the door, and then he has to rat out Jimmy, and get like the wrap up of the movie is just, like it's so simple and like beautiful. Like the last like scene where he's like, oh, what does he say? What's the last line of the movie where it's like it's just a shot of
He's
him and his home, and he's basically saying like, "I miss being a gangster," like
yeah,
it
it's
was fun
just
while it lasted. He said something
yeah.
like that or
Yeah,
something.
I think he said, I think the very last line is that he said something like he's gonna have to live out the rest of his life just being like a normal schmuck or something
Exactly.
like
Yeah.
that.
Yes. That's it.
Black.
Yeah. Which is incredible. Which is like the best thing, the best line we could have ended this movie on. Because really, what this
Absolutely.
movie is ultimately about is, about the the elation of being a gangster and like the power and like the dangers of it, and the downfall of it. But at the end, he recognizes like it was pretty fucking awesome,
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
I love that because there's something so human about that. Like everybody wants to be someone maybe in some respect, right? Want to be respected or by their human peers, by in some way, but him, recognizing at the end, like, well, shit, I'm just gonna have to be a normal guy now. It's like
Yeah.
almost still proud of what he did. Proud of like his, escapades and how long he lasted. Almost, and it's like this, you know, really beautiful like ending to his character. It's
Right.
amazing.
Which it just hit me that the similarity, I don't know how relevant this will be or interesting, but like that this is on like the theme of like things being derivative or just the
Uh huh.
same overusing the same idea. It's the same thing that's Walter White's character
Oh,
in
totally.
Breaking
Yeah.
Bad.
Oh, yeah.
It's the
Yeah.
same thing, which is like what you wouldn't say. That's like, oh, that's
It's
so boring. It's
definitely
the same
similarities
idea.
for sure. Like he definitely, um, you're right because spoiler for Breaking Bad. If you haven't seen Breaking Bad, which I don't know, man. Listen, I was shocked that people haven't seen Goodfellas, but I don't know. So spoiler for Breaking Bad. You haven't seen it, but yeah, Walter White. Yeah, you're right. He becomes like he's he's proud of what he the empire that he built but he also recognizes like I have to, I have to make things right for my family, you know,
Right. That
and that's
iconic
what he
scene.
ultimately makes the decision at the end. Harry Hill says like I gotta get the witness protection program so I can protect my family, protect my wife and my kids, and
Yeah. Or
um
more, maybe even more selfishly, just not die, you know, like
well,
that was like at
also
the
that
end.
for sure,
Yeah.
because you know that because they divorced, you know, over when right when he went in, so I don't think it was going to last or anything, but he
Right.
did it
Right.
to um do that, which you know is totally good parallel to Walter White, you know, the
Yeah.
rise and fall, baby,
Right.
of
Yeah. That storyline.
criminal overlords.
And
Not that
that
Harry Hill's an overlord, but
right, right. Something, you know, same gist at the very
the
least. And
criminal underground.
that whole description of that last scene, I think the joy and the wonder of that, even though it's complicated, like the idea of not sort of picking up on all the details the first time, but
Yeah.
still sort of getting it, you know, kind of makes me think about this phenomenon with modern audiences or frustrations that can happen because a lot of times people, it's a cool thing when you begin watching movies and you realize that there are more ways to tell a story than just telling stories with one meaning right to it, with a
Totally. Yeah.
direct specific thing behind it.
Yeah.
And I think it makes people kind of uncomfortable, like when you're talking about that phenomenon with the taxi driver shot,
Yeah.
where it's like that's grabbing to me and I can't explain it. As
Right.
wonderful as that feeling is, it's a little stressful too to not be able to
Yeah.
put like words to that sort of
Well, yeah. I
phenomenon.
mean, it's the same for that. To me, it's the same idea of like it's just easy to get stuff that you like, you know. And like back then,
And
the
that you
taxi
know that
driver
you
was
like
like
and you
the one of the
know.
only like yeah. We went to the movie theater. The TV was 3 channels in 1977. You didn't have a
Yeah.
lot, you know. You could read comics or books or whatever, but like, if you wanted to see a movie, it was like all right, we got 4 movies to choose from for the next 3 months, you know? Like it was like, you know, so um people were more willing to like, all right, what am I gonna see here? It's more of an experience, you know.
Right. Right.
Now
And
it's like people go to movie theaters and take off their shoes and like fall asleep and like,
right. And
you know,
also with like
get a
this
handy,
over
you know.
with this over indoctrination of just like stuff, you know. You want
Yeah.
something that's like consistently going to
Yeah,
please you.
exactly.
But this kind of gets at the idea what you're talking about, this phenomenon both of this the indescribable joy of watching this and sort of getting it even if you don't get the plot or care about the plot that much,
Yeah.
or just how great these scenes are the reasons why it's such a classic, because that's why
Oh
it
yeah,
like
absolutely.
connects with like us
Yeah.
as humans, you
Yeah.
know. It's like is like that indescribable
That feeling
magic
of
that
it,
sort of
you
comes
know,
with it.
like because there's so many stories, like even before Goodfellas, they're Scarface, I mean, like the
Yeah.
original Scarface, you know, that like you know there are gangster stories have been like told to death. I would assume that even like when this movie came out, like it was a genre, you know, there are a lot of them, you know,
Yeah.
and like what this movie brought was that Scorsese direction, that feeling of like it actually makes you feel like a gangster. It makes you feel like you get those highs and you get those lows and you get those like almost like drug feeling of like you know that high feeling of like doing something like stealing a truck or you know blowing up a bunch of you know stolen cars in a parking lot was like one of the best shots of the fucking movie. And 2 days
Yeah.
Henry Hill running away
Yeah.
from the fucking crazy shot. Um, but like it understands that even like through Henry Hill's like you know voiceover, like he explains like I fucking loved it, you know, I loved
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
and
And
like you
it's
feel it, you know, it's not like you're not like nervous or something like oh he loves doing this is like no like it's exciting and it's
yeah.
something
Yeah. Yeah.
intoxicating. That's why gangster movies are still being made. I mean, if we wouldn't like it, they wouldn't be made. But we do like it. It's the same fascination we have with like serial killers. So, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Totally.
like
Yeah. Exactly the same.
so.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that I think is really wonderful about like the effort that he put into this direction, and of really incredible directors, what they always are able
So
to bring
insane, dude.
is, in addition to just to putting on this show, this entertainment and this spectacle,
Yeah,
still making it so human, and that human
yeah.
connection about it
Well, that's
too, which
cinema.
is
You know,
that
that's
cinema.
like
Yeah,
that's
in a nutshell,
listen.
that really is what
If
cinema
you guys
is.
want to know what he was saying when he said Marvel movies aren't cinema, there you go.
Yeah,
That's what he meant by it. That's what he
yeah,
said. You can disagree with that, fair, but that's what he said.
yeah.
That's what he was trying to say. Um, and if you guys know who Martin Scorsese is and seen his movies, I don't want to hear your opinion about a quote that he said. That. So like, of course, a guy like that would be like, "These movies are bullshit." Like there's another quote that was so fun. I think it was another like legendary filmmaker, like just came out and said something worse about
Yeah,
Marvel
about
movies. I
Marvel
think he said
movies.
like, who was it? Was it Cam? Was it Cronenberg? I don't know if it was.
I think
I
I
don't
saw
think it
this
was
too.
Cronenberg. What's that?
I feel like I saw a clip. I don't know if this is accurate, so don't hold me to this, but is there a clip of Denis Villeneuve talking about Marvel stuff
No,
too?
he
Is that what you're
loves that.
talking
He
about?
likes those. Yeah, he
Okay.
likes.
Maybe
I mean,
maybe I saw him lauding
he's
them.
into the spectacle stuff. So
Right,
I
right.
get it.
And
But
the
I like all
visuals
the
and all of
movies.
that.
I'm not saying that they're bullshit, but some people like. There's like one guy. It was so funny. He's like, these movies aren't bullshit. And I think
Hmm.
I'm gonna say it was Cronenberg. I don't think it was, but anyway. But people are saying this. Like a lot of like legendary filmmakers who come from this completely different time are saying this. Like it has to make sense to people. Like if
Yeah.
it doesn't make
Yeah.
sense, do some research and get back to me. So
Yeah. Yeah.
like it's that simple to me. Like
We get
it's
if you're 12 and you haven't seen a lot of movies
you're
and you've only
12,
known
yeah.
Marvel.
You don't even know who Martin Scorsese is, and you
Yeah.
shouldn't be watching Martin Scorsese movies if you're 12 years old.
Who is this old
You know,
man
watch
spouting this
Hugo.
bullshit?
Hugo is the only Martin Scorsese movie you can watch if you're 12 years old. It's the only kid movie he made, and it's like fantastic. Um, yeah, this movie is absolute masterpiece. It's like pinnacle of Scorsese's career in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. I'm so happy that you got to watch it for the first time.
So fucking glad I finally
And
saw it. It
here's
was
some more,
great.
many more times because I'm almost guarantee you're gonna want to watch this a few more times in your life.
Yeah, this was
Very
the kind of
entertaining movie.
this is the kind of movie that when I after I saw it, it wasn't like the gut punch that Godfather was,
Yeah,
where like you it hit you and you were like, that was fantastic.
yeah.
That was unbelievable. Goodfellas is just like one of these things where it's just like, this is a part of
So
me and
this is
it's
just in
growing
my
more
DNA.
powerful.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
because that was like my feeling in high school when I first saw this movie. And like when I saw it in high school for the first time, I was like, I was I didn't really get the story that much because I was like
Right.
14, and like um, but the feeling I got,
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
feeling
right.
and the vibe and the coolness and the costumes and the everything
Character
about it
moments.
is like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like you want to return to it because it's just the vibe of it is just undeniably cool and awesome.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um,
hmm
but I love this movie. I love Martin Scorsese. Uh, he means a lot to me. You know, Wolf of Wall Street was a really weird experience. Like Wolf of Wall Street was like the first movie by like a filmmaker that I like snuck in to see. Like
Yeah.
I saw Wolf of Wall Street when it came out, so I was 14 or something, and me and my buddy snuck in the movie theater to go
That's
see
dope.
this movie.
That's dope.
And I remember seeing that movie; it changed my life in many ways. One was it was a sexual awakening of some kind. I think 'cause never seen that much sex in a movie. Still, to this day, I don't think. Um, and also, I was just blown away by the style of it, and just like never seen a movie like that, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, that made me go watch Goodfellas, and made me go watch like his career, and like, you know, it's carried over throughout my whole life, and You know, that's what amazing filmmakers do. You know, they give you great entertainment throughout your whole life. You know, and he's
Yeah.
continuing to do that, which is like mind blowing. You know, like he's 75 years old, and I cannot wait to see his new movie. Like that's impressive as hell, man.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
he's just sure his movies are different. You know, they're a little more laid back, but that's because he can't like he's you know you can't make a Goodfellas today. Like the pace and the rapid like coverage that is in that movie is just absurd. You know, so he's got to slow down a little bit. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
but they're still powerful films, and I highly recommend anybody just start from the beginning and just go because you'll find some of those films to be like life changing. You know,
Yeah, it's Scorsese is definitely like one of those gateway drugs directors who is like one
totally.
of the first you come into and you realize, oh, this is what this could be.
Yeah, and he
Wow,
was for me,
huge
100%.
door.
Yeah.
I mean, he's one of those
Honestly, he
guys.
was to me before Tarantino. Like, I
Yeah,
got into Scorsese world and Tarantino when I was young.
and I think one of the reasons for that is that like I mean I got into Scorsese because of my film teaching, my film
Yeah,
studies
yeah, yeah,
classes and
yeah.
stuff,
Right.
because Scorsese is like he's a master of
Yeah,
the
he's top
craft.
five,
So
American filmmakers.
if you want to, if so, when people are teaching film, it's just like just watch Scorsese because he knows how to do it.
Yeah. Watch Raging Bull and, what's going on. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
So, yeah, amazing. I would love to do a Scorsese rank at some point or tier list or
One
something
day we will. I
one
have a lot
day.
of movies I need to catch up on, but
Yeah,
I
I have
want to
like
do that too.
four or something. A lot of these the early stuff, but yeah, I love them. This is a fantastic film.
I
Rest in
agree.
peace to Ray Liotta.
Yep.
Um,
Rest in peace.
if you haven't seen it, go watch it. You spoiled it. I'm telling you, it doesn't matter. It's a ride.
Still really good. Go
It's a
watch it.
ride. It doesn't matter. Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you guys for listening. We will see you in the next one.
Okay, bye
Bye.
bye.